Aaron, I'm curious, if you were practicing in medicine now after your more realized state, how do you think it would be for you? Well, this is a really interesting and good question because realization, and really all that means is the experiential understanding of what is true, never ends. It's always an unfolding because presence, this, life, this, all there is, all that is, all that ever was, is infinite. And that means it has infinite depth. It can't be known through the human mind in terms of thought, in terms of story. It can't. But since it's what you are, you can be it kind of awake and knowingly. And so as that unfolds, it just keeps going. And Simon and I talk about this in the podcast. There's no end, which means there's also no end to how it'll surprise you. You think, oh man, I'm really realized and awake, and I've got this stuff dialed. I've done the emotion work. I've done the trauma integration. I've done all those things. And then something happens and life just shows you, you were never awake. You didn't know anything. Because look, you can't handle this thing that's happening. I accidentally opened an app here. I was trying to open another app. Hold on. Let me fix this mess I've made. Start AF, start, stop. See what I mean? I've done this for how many years and it's always something new. And so the question of, well, if you're practicing medicine now full time in the realized state, well, it's always been a process. It's always been an unfolding. So in 2012, when I had the first big awakening glimpse or whatever it was, I don't know what it was. Can't really talk about it. Just my life changed totally. I was still practicing and I noticed it changed instantly, that I was able to be there. I was able to be present in a room with not just the patients, but with colleagues, with staff, with others, apparent others. And so that was the one thing I was like, wow, I'm really gone right here. I'm not off in my head all the time. Now, you could lose yourself in your head, but the ability to be super present was first and foremost obvious. Then as that continues to unfold and evolve and different realizations seem to click, different shifts, different sort of phase shifts seem to happen, like where I apparently feel like things are here, I think that practice of medicine would become much more energetic. In other words, it's less about what you say and what you do and what you type in the chart, and more about what is there in the room with the patient, who's no longer the patient. It's just this field of aliveness. And there's not a sense of profound separation between you and the other. So how that might manifest is very energetic. The patient may feel different in that encounter than they would have with earlier Zubin character, who was very character bound, very much in his head, very much a process and problem solver. Now it's more like, whoa, what is this? And it's hard to talk about what that's like. As far as me and my experience of it, I think the suffering component of stress and unworthiness and shame and feeling never enough, I think that has settled down a lot. And so you would really just show up right there with an unconditional acceptance of what's going on. That's the other piece I think that has softened, is the judgmental aspect of this personality. The character Zubin is very judgmental, mainly I think because that's how he's wired, but also because it was a way of keeping the attention and the control away from looking inward and feeling this sense of shame and unworthiness and imposter syndrome and all of that. So since that's really calmed down, I can sit now with people fully accepting exactly where they are, and much more. Now, it's not perfect. Like, judgment arises, anger, irritation, frustration, those still arise, but they're not held so tightly. So that practice, now, so this is the paradox. You have to feel called to do that practice in this place where I feel this is now for me. I can't do anything inauthentic without it feeling really bad, like really bad. And that's why I'm not practicing right now, because the practice of medicine, the way that we do it, the way that I was trained to do it, feels very inauthentic to me in where I am, whereas it didn't before. So because of that, I don't sit and see patients. I do this. This feels authentically like where I should be. When I get an email from a doctor, and this happens routinely, an email from a doctor, say, who says, I never understood what you guys were talking about with awakening and all of this. There was just something that felt like, oh, at some point I'll circle back on this. And then I heard an interview you did with someone, or something you said on a Sunday Zen Live, or something that you wrote, suddenly triggered in me this understanding. And I don't know what it is. I can't talk about it, but I just wanted to let you know. And now I'm really interested in whatever this is. And it's like, okay, that expression to me, relationally, it feels like how medicine felt when I was practicing. Like that's the authentic expression of what this Zubin character is supposed to do at this point. Because he's not doing anything. It's just like, okay, well, what's really happening? What is life doing with this instrument? And that feels right. Whereas, going to the hospital and rounding and doing all that right now feels inauthentic. Same with doing talks about medicine. It's kind of like, well, right now it doesn't feel like what I should do. I get these invitations and now I turn them down, even though they're a lot of money and there are lots of ego validation with doing talks. And, I know they go well. I know people like them. I get that feedback. I've done it now for over 10 years. Like I've got it dialed in. Doesn't feel authentic. Can't do it. So until that clicks again with whatever the next thing is, then I'll just do the next right thing in that moment. So that's kind of a long answer to your very good question. Kay Moody, who's a physician as well, I agree, we're pushed to leave patients and be at the computer. Exactly. And when that feels, and the thing is, you don't have to do it that way, but then you're not going to make a living. You're not going to get paid. You're not going to see enough patients. You're not going to have the throughput. You're not going to have the RVUs. You're not going to have the administrative validation that you need to make a living, unless you do direct primary care or something off the grid, which is fine. Those are beautiful options. Hi, Rebecca. Aaron says, that's a great explanation. I am a nursing faculty, and I feel much more effective when I trust my flow state in this story that includes me and my students. That's beautifully expressed. Yeah, that's, what it is it's a, by the way, because now when I tend to express, there's a lot of stillness and silence, I put a background on the TV that's moving so that when I'm still, it's not that the video's frozen on the live because it's still moving in the background. It's that there's stillness expressing. That itself is an expression. It's louder than words usually. So all of presence, this, which is all that is a flow of life. It's a flow of experiencing without an experiencer. It's just raw experience flowing, outpouring out of being, which is impossible to talk about. It loses all meaning when you put words on it. And it has no meaning because it just is what is. So when you talk about being in a flow state with your students, that is the flow of life. And things are happening spontaneously, including planning, so-called thinking ahead, those kind of things. They're all emerging spontaneously in this flow of life. Normally, in the normal human operating system, consciousness is apparently sort of stuck in being reflective thought. So thoughts and thoughts and thoughts going to thoughts and thoughts and thoughts. So we live in our head, so to speak, metaphorically. We live in thought. So experience is mainly thought. The actual experience of our sensory field, the energetics in the room, the feeling of your butt on a seat, the feeling of air on your skin, the seeing of thoughts as they arise, attached to nothing, referring to no one, just like clouds on a sky, that is apparently obscured because we're like thought, 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 thought. Future, past, what am I charting? What's the story of this patient? What's going on? When that relaxes and we're immersed in life, as life, the center of the one who's having the experience can drop in a sense. In other words, there's just the experience, and that's a flow state. People say, I lost myself in X. That's what that means. That's what they're pointing at. It's an indescribable, non-conceptual experience of life living life. That's a flow state. And people say, well, can you function that way? Yes, you can. Not only can you function in many ways authentically and better than in the mind-identified state. So that's beautiful, Aaron.